Like, share, subscribe. Shouts out to the Lions Den community. And don't y'all forget to subscribe to the podcast show. Link will be pinned in the top of the chat.
Just name the channel who could bang with us. I'll prove that you are smoking dust. GGB Media is top notch in this game, y'all. You failures only have your self to blame, y'all. Cricket TV and a weapons make you suckers cry. Why don't you close your channel, crawl into a hole and die? Shout out to those who love our movement, no, we'll never flop until you get your mouth off LGBT. We are the underground outfit, y'all. We built this whole thing by ourselves, look in y'all. Independence start with self-preservation. If you can't take care of self, then how can you build a nation, y'all? Yup, we got that merch for the ladies and yes, we even got that merch for the babies and we got appliances and everything that you will need. We got some banging songs that make anemic haters bleed.
All right, man. Salute to everybody for tapping on in. Press 2 in the comment section if y'all can hear me. Let me get a mic check. 1 2 1 2. Press 2 if you guys can hear me in the comment section. We're gonna get right to this video, man. Can y'all hear me? Y'all let me know if y'all can hear me in the comments, man. Appreciate it if y'all can hear me. I think y'all can. Okay, yeah, we got to. All right. Salute everybody, man. If y'all want to support the channel, the link's been at the top of the chat room, Cash App, PayPal. And let me say before we start this video, I got a couple things I want to say. First of all, Fat Joe, Pistol Pete, Rock Nation, and everybody else that have been accused in these allegations are innocent unless proven otherwise in a court of law. And also, let me start off by saying this. First of all, the lawyer who has brought this case, Tyrone Blackburn, he is under major fire. Let me say this again. I am putting this out here before I say this video. Tyrone Blackburn, the lawyer, the attorney that is bringing this case, he is under heavy fire. Why do I say that? Because Tyrone Blackburn just got named in the Diddy trial by Brianna Bungolan as being a liar. Now, he was supposed to be her representative in her lawsuit against Sean Diddy Combs. She said that she fired. This is what she said, not me. She said she fired Tyrone Blackburn because he lied and fabricated allegations in her lawsuit. So we have to put that out there first. That was named in court, in federal court. She got to understand under oath and said that she fired Tyrone Blackburn, the same lawyer filing this lawsuit right here, because he lied in her lawsuit. That needs to be put out there first. So before we even start, let me put that out there to the masses first, because everybody been talking about this. Everybody want to, and so we have to acknowledge once again that Brianna Bungolan in the court of law under oath, right? Penalty of perjury. That's what happened. You understand what I'm saying? Excuse me. Joey says Rock Nation, but not Jay-Z. Well, Jay-Z's lawyer just came out and said Jay-Z is Rock Nation and Rock Nation is Jay-Z. His lawyer just said that in a different filing. So Rock Nation is Jay-Z. I mean, his lawyer, Alex Spiro, just said that in a statement, in an official statement. So you take it as you may. Ladies and gentlemen, I had to say that first to put things properly into perspective, because you won't be doing correct journalism if you don't make that information clear. Now, Tyrone Blackburn, he has a right to speak up for himself and the allegations that are made against him. Tyrone Blackburn has lawsuits out here against TD Jakes. He has lawsuits out here against Diddy. And now he has a lawsuit out here against Fat Joe, Pistol Pete, Rock Nation, Rich Player, Sneaker Addict Touring, Slate Inc., excuse me, Rock Nation, ABC Corporations, and he's got a lot of John Does and people that have not been named in this lawsuit yet. You understand what I'm saying? And so this thing's gonna get real ugly, right? It's gonna get real ugly, man. It already has. Uh, Now, last time I checked, Fat Joe again, he has claimed his innocence. When somebody made allegations against him, I think it was last month, he claimed his innocence, and now we're at this situation right here. Now, let me go ahead and break down some of what the situation is right now, ladies and gentlemen. All right. So here are some of the people. Shout out to my boy Diddy Doc. Here are some of the people that are being here. Or here are the people that are being sued. Right there. So it's Terrence Dixon, aka TA. He is the plaintiff, and he is making these allegations against Fat Joe, Joe Cartagena, right? Pistol Pete, Richard Rich Player, Joe Spire, Erica Moreira, Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, Slate Inc., Rock Nation LLC, John Doe's 1 through 10, Jane Doe's 1 through 10, and ABC Corporation's 1 through 10, right? So these are all the people that are being uh, sued, and the allegations are coming out against in this lawsuit. Now, let's start with some of these allegations on the chart. So he actually came out with a chart. And as you guys see in this chart, he lists a lot of things, right, that he's alleging that happened with this situation. Now, you see number one says forced labor of the plaintiff TA, right? And we'll get to who he is in a minute. I just want to show y'all the chart so y'all understand when I break this thing down to you what he's alleging, even though, as I told you guys, his lawyer is under major heat right now. Now, again, the key participants, he says in the forced labor of plaintiff TA is Fat Joe, Joe Cartagena, Rich Player, and accountant Doe. So there's an accountant that he hasn't named. Location, he says New York, New Jersey, Florida, and internationally. Uh, and he says conduct summary, coerce plaintiff's labor through threats, delayed pay, and false IRS filings is what he's alleging. Also, sex trafficking, he's alleged being sex trafficking. Now, he says he was sex trafficked. The key participants, he say, is Joe Cartagena, that's Fat Joe, Rich Player, Agent Doe, Driver Doe, Pistol Pete. In the states, he say New York, Jersey, Florida, Nevada, California, and internationally. Also, he says that they coerced him into non-consensual sexual acts under threats and manipulation. Also, number three, witness retaliation, right? He says that was by Fat Joe, Cartagena, Rich Player, and Pistol Pete. Now, he claims that was in New York and Florida that happened. He says attempt to have him allure him into a violent ambush after public disclosures, right? So he's saying that there was witness retaliation. Now, also, he's claiming number four, conspiracy to commit violence. And he says, it says redacted. Now, he redacted some things, which means he took some things out, but he's putting that on Fat Joe, Joe Cartagena. He says that happened in New York. And he says that Joe Cartagena admitted prior violent act uh, resulting in wrongful conviction of another. Also, he's brought the late great rapper DMX into the situation. He says DMX assault directive. Now, he says that's Fat Joe. Now, apparently he's saying that happened in Miami, Florida. Now, he's saying that, they ordered him to confront rapper DMX in a retaliation, right? RIP to DMX. Now, you have this next one, which is number six, where he says late rapper stabbing, quote unquote, caught catch up. Now, he claims that that's Joe, Fat Joe, Rich Player, and Pistol Pete were involved in that. And he said that happened in the Bronx, New York. And he says that that was retaliatory stabbing ordered using an enterprise code name Ketchup, right? Now, number seven, he says, the cafe Ketchup incident. Now, he puts in this Fat Joe, JB, Rich Player, Pistol Pete in New York. Now, he's saying that there was a public stabbing ordered in retaliation after a nightclub altercation. Now, also, number eight says Mac Main assault directive. on Mac Main, I guess. And he says that was Fat Joe, Joe Cartagena. And he says that the defendant, Fat Joe, excuse me, not defendant. He says that he directed the plaintiff, right? He says that Fat Joe directed him to assault Mac Main, right, for perceived disrespect. So he said he was sent to assault Mac Main for perceived disrespect, right? Now, number 9, interstate sex trafficking of minors. Um, he says he's accusing Fat Joe, Joe Cartagena, Rich Player, Agent Doe, and Driver Doe of this, right? And he's saying that this happened in New York, Florida, California, Nevada, and internationally, right? Now, he said he alleges that they transported minors for uh, coerced sex under false pretenses. Now it goes on. Number 10, he says commercial fraud, right? Now it says that Fat Joe, he's alleging that Fat Joe and accountant Doe, who hasn't been named, and this was done in the Bronx, New York. He says fraudulent um, sneaker resale and chargeback schemes is what he says. He's alleging. Number 11, he's alleging tax evasion and money laundering. Now, he is accusing Fat Joe, accountant Doe, and Erica Moria of that. And he's claiming that that happened in New York, New Jersey, Florida, and internationally, right? Now, let's get to this, right? Let's get to this, right? Um, he says under shell companies and fake filings to hide income, right? Now, number 12, he alleges public use of catch-up code. Now, he blames that on Fat Joe, and he says that was publicly recorded. He says confirmed violent slang term for stabbings during public interview. Now, I have to say this one more time. The attorney that is bringing this case, and he has a right to defend himself in this situation, uh, his name is Tyrone Blackburn. He is under major heat because Brianna Bone in the court of law claimed that she fired him as an attorney because she claimed that he lied in allegations for her in a lawsuit that she was filing against Diddy. So this has to be put out there. Now, again, Tyrone Blackburn has a right to speak his side of that. I haven't heard his side of it. I haven't heard him speak anything. But that must be put out there because that was stated in open court in a federal case in the Sean Diddy Combs case, right? So take it as you may. Number 13, PPP loan fraud is he's accusing them of. Now, they say that was Fat Joe, Joe Cartagena, and accountant Doe. Now, he claims this happened in New York, New Jersey, and in Florida. And he says uh, secured relief funds under false business pretenses via sneaker addict touring, is what he said. Also, number 14, he says unauthorized legal practice. Now, he blames that on Erica and Fat Joe. Now, he said that happened in Florida and in New York. Now, he said filed uh, shell company documents while unlicensed to practice law. Number 15, now he says uh, structuring laundering via shell something. So he says he puts that on Fat Joe, Erica, and accountant Doe. Now he said that happened in New York, New Jersey, Florida, and international. Now he's alleging that they used nominee entities to obscure ownership of enterprise income. Number 16, wage theft and coercion. It says Fat Joe, accountant Doe, New York, New Jersey, Florida, international. Now he's alleging that they paid the plaintiff off the books, inflated IRS filings, and suppressed real income. Right? Now let's keep going. Uh, Number 17, assault of Dre. Right? Now he claims that that's on Fat Joe and Pistol Pete. and that happened in Miami, Florida, allegedly. Now, he's alleging that they ordered physical assault of a music producer to intimidate the industry collaborators. Now, I think that might be the guy they talk about when they say Cool and Dre. The producers, I think he's talking about the Dre. Now, again, Fat Joe and all these people are innocent unless proven guilty. And once again, I have to say this again. The lawyer that has brought this lawsuit, Tyrone Blackburn, I do not know him. He's been in a lot of these lawsuits. Tyrone Blackburn, a couple weeks ago in open court, in the Diddy case, by Brianna Bungolan, she went up there and stated that she fired him because she claims that Tyrone Blackburn lied in parts of her lawsuit against Diddy. So she says she fired him and got new representation. That was stated in open court. That has to be stated. I think that people have to take that into equation because everybody was like, damn, Diddy did this to her, Diddy. And she says no. She says Diddy hung her over the balcony, but she also said that Diddy did not sexually assault her. And she said that Tyrone Blackburn put that in the lawsuit without her, permission. And she says that's why she fired him. So people need to understand, while we saying this, people need to understand this stuff because we have to be fair on the reporting. I don't know Tyrone Blackburn. Never spoke with him day before in my life. Haven't heard anything from him. Haven't heard him speak about that situation. But that has to be put out there. I'm going to say it again. It has to have been put out there. These are all facts. It has to be put out there. Because she stated that in open court. Right? So, let's keep going. Right? So, number 19, he says online threats. Right? Oh, excuse me. He says money laundering via UPNYC. And he blames Fat Joe, right? JB, and Accountant Doe. And he said that happened in the Bronx, New York, right? Now, they said cashed out illegal funds, ghost payroll, luxury displays, and cash structuring is what he's accused of. He's accused them of. Number 19, he's also saying online threats and intimidation. Now, he's accused of Fat Joe, Pistol Pete, and Rich Player. And he said this happened online and in New York. Now, he says that he sent coded threats via, right, burner accounts to obstruct legal filings. Now, number 20, he's alleging ghost contracts and royalty fraud, where he's saying Fat Joe, music producer, Doe, who has been unnamed, in New York and California, fabricated split sheets to remove plaintiff from song ownership credits. Now, also, number 21, he's accusing them of forced exhibitionism and sexual degradation, right? Basically degrading himself sexually. Now, he blames that on Fat Joe, JB, and Pistol Pete. Now, he says that happens in New York, Florida, and internationally. Now, he alleges that they forced the plaintiff into group sex, voyeurism, which that's homosexuality pretty much, and public humiliation. Now, also, number 22, he's accusing them of wire fraud, tax fraud, and coercive wage theft status violated. Now, he's saying this is in New York, Florida, Jersey, and internationally. Now, he's alleging that from 2017 onward, that Rock Nation and BDO, under Fat Joe's discretion, misclassified his labor to evade taxes, suppress rights, and enforce, right? And so these are all the things that he's let. Now it continues to go on. Forced economic control while profiting from the scheme, right? So he's accused Rock Nation of that too. He's also, number 23, is accusing of structuring wire fraud and laundering of enterprise proceeds through layered bank accounts. Now, he's accusing Fat Joe, Rock Nation, BDO, Subdale United Bank, in New York, Florida, New Jersey, and internationally of these crimes. Now he says from 2016 to 2024, the enterprise used multiple, right, Sabadell accounts to launder proceeds from forced labor and fraud, routing funds through shell companies under BDO's oversight for Rock Nation. Man, this is big shit right here, man. This is big problems right here, bro. Allegations. I'm going to say these are major allegations, bro. And again, all these parties are innocent unless proven guilty. Point blank, period. Another one, 24. Payroll fraud, tax misclassification, and coercive financial structuring status violated. Now he blames that on Fat Joe, Joe Cartagena, Rock Nation, and BDO. Now he says since 2017, Rock Nation and BDO under false W-2s and 1090 filings, right? To suppress the plaintiff's labor rights, laundering payments through shell entities and Sabadell accounts to conceal the enterprise coercion, right? It goes on. Next one. Now, it says the overview of what they're saying the enterprise is. So they're saying that this is a criminal enterprise. So they're saying that enterprise, the leader, they're saying is Joseph Fat Joe Cartagena, Fat Joe, right? And they called him AKA the Dirt, AKA the Don. Now it says role within the enterprise. They're alleging that Fat Joe's role in the enterprise was directing all racketeering activity, issued orders for violence, handled revenue, coordinated intimidation, and creative theft. Now it goes on to Erica Juliana Moria. Now, they say she was a legal representative unauthorized to practice law in the state of Florida. Now, they say and they allege her role was file fraudulent corporate documents, engage in unauthorized practice of law, and establish shell corporations to conceal illicit funds. Also, they're naming Azaya Cartagena. Now they're saying that this is Fat Joe's daughter, and they're saying that Fat Joe's daughter is the co-conspirator. Now they're alleging that her role was nominal owner of shell entities. Azira LLC obscures Fat Joe's actual ownership and control to evade liabilities, is what he's claiming. Now, Slate Inc., right? Now they're saying financial operations and money laundering network, shell companies and fraudulent entities. They're saying Slate Inc. Now they're saying Central Financial Conduit, primary corporate vehicle through which Cartagena Enterprise, right, consolidated, laundered, and redistributed illicit funds. Now also they name Belidat LLC, Wood Inc., and so they accuse them of uh, subsidiary laundering vehicles. Now they basically said that their subsidiary entities operated directly under Slate Inc. Right now, this thing goes on. It goes on. Hold on one second, guys. I got to put up on the screen. Hold on. It goes on. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second to put this on the screen for y'all. Make sure I put this up here. Right. My bad, you guys. Put this on the screen for all of y'all. All right. So as y'all see right here, when y'all smash the like button, as y'all come on in, share the video, like the video, man. Salute to everybody that's tapped on in. Again, Fat Joe and everybody else that's named, Pistol Pete, Rock Nation, all these people are innocent unless proven guilty in a court of law. They are to be presumed innocent And again, and I will say this once again, uh, in this situation, ladies and gentlemen, the attorney that has brought this lawsuit, he has just been named in the Diddy case. And Brianna Mongolan basically came out and said that she fired this lawyer because she claims that the lawyer lied in his public filings uh, in a lawsuit she had against Diddy. So she said she had to get a new lawyer because he fabricated some things. Now, I haven't heard Tyrone Blackburn speak his piece on that. He have a right to speak his part on that. But that is what she claimed in the court of law under oath uh, when she testified against Diddy on the stand, right? Now it keeps going, you guys. Uh, as y'all see right there on your screen from the top, um, and it's saying that they forming a multi-layered financial laundering infrastructure designed explicitly to diffuse and obstruct enterprise funds across several corporate fronts, as y'all see right there. And the next they said Azaya LLC, who's supposed to be Fat Joe's daughter, they're claiming. They're saying nominee controlled entity. They're saying Azaya LLC was strategically registered under the nominal ownership of the defendant, Fat Joe's daughter, uh, Azira Cartagena. The nominee controlled entity served the ex- what served the express purpose of obscuring defendant Fat Joe's personal ownership, control, and legal exposure, right? And then they put the sneaker company in there. They also, made allegations against them with the PPP thing. They also put what is that down there? Demo LLC, something like that. Fraud Link Enterprise. They also have Pistol Pete. Now they're saying the enterprise enforcement and security. He's claiming that Pistol Pete was an enforcer and street captain that managed physical retaliation, orchestrated beatings, stabbings, and targeted. And then he redacted that. He didn't put that in the. He redacted whatever else he said. He didn't put that in the lawsuit right there. He redacted that, right? Uh, they said executes threats of physical assaults, reports directly to defendant Joe Cartagena, supervising violent enforcement, is what he claimed, right? This is all things he's claiming right here, right? As y'all can see it right there. Then he's got Richard Rich Player on there, right? Business manager and head of enforcement. He's claiming that this guy coordinated enterprise messaging, relayed threats and orders, assisted in, laundering proceeds, and interface with third-party handlers. You know, the reason why it's so hard for me is the handwriting is small as hell. So y'all have to forgive me for that little tiny ass handwriting that I'm trying to read through the screen. Handwriting small as hell. All right, so let's keep going, you guys. So that's what he blamed on him, right? So also Enforcer Doe 1, Enforcer Doe 2, he didn't name those people. They're supposed to be enforcers, and he calls those executioners. Now he says that they report to Rich Player and Pistol Pete, conduct direct threats, surveillance, intimidation, and victim isolation operations, were responsible for stabbings, and then he redacted, who I don't know what he left out. He redacted that though. And he says targeted violent attacks. Now, he says JB, Raul, and Ack, street crew. And he accuses them. He says they execute ghost transactions, intimidation of rivals, engage in sex trafficking, and customer manipulation through UPNYC. Now it says enterprise, logistics, and operational support. Now he says driver, who's the doe who hasn't been named, He said he's an enterprise driver. He said he provides discreet transportation for victims, cash, and contraband, ensures covert movement of assets and personal, domestically and internationally. And he says Agent Doe, travel agent, coordinates discreet domestic international travel, books airline tickets, private charters, and hotel accommodations, including for minors, maintains confidentiality of the enterprise movements and illicit activities, is what he is alleging in that one, right? Also, this one right here, UP NYC store employees, frontline retail, facilitated credit card fraud and unauthorized resale of exclusive merchandise for and served as shell front for laundering illegal profits. And y'all smash the like button as y'all come on in, man. Like button is free. Share the video, like the video, like button is free. Salute to everybody that's in the building. And I don't know why these people are trying to put Fat Joe and Big Pun against each other. Fat Joe and Big Pun were brothers. They was cool. Fat Joe and Big Pun were brothers. They was cool. I don't know why you guys in the comment section doing that. I don't get that. It says cash money. It says cash based money laundering, right? It says the N. It says that the UPNYC was utilized strategically to inject illicitly obtained cash into seemingly legitimate business transactions, revenue streams from unrecorded or off the book retail sales transactions, as well as funds derived from wage theft were systematically commingled with legitimate sale revenues, thereby laundering illicit profits through the guise of standard retail operations. Now it goes on to say financial concealment and fraud. Now it goes on to say, right? It goes on to say, right? Through deceptive bookkeeping practices, UPNYC deliberately maintained misleading financial records to conceal the enterprise true income, to facilitate substantial tax evasion, falsify financial documentation, and routinely create to mask enterprise derived income, evade IRS scrutiny, and facilitate fraudulent employer and employee tax reporting. Also, it goes on, venue for trafficking and enterprise meetings. Now it says UPNYC frequently functioned as a discrete logistical hub where trafficking victims were initially recruited and groomed. It served as a base of operations for meetings among enterprise members, including Fat Joe and his enforcers and distributors. It says, and discrete interactions to arrange transportation for minors, they say, and plot attacks of rivals. Now it goes on. It goes on. Excuse me, y'all. For everybody who keeps saying that, oh, well, Joe did this to Big Pun, this, that, and the third. Man, Big Pun ain't had no issue with Fat Joe before he passed away. If Big Pun did not have an issue with Fat Joe, I'm not in their personal family business. I never saw Big Pun before he passed away. R.I.P. to Pun. Even if I stutter, I still shit on you. I never seen Pun come out talking down on Fat Joe. I never seen it. So when y'all put that against them, I never seen. Show me one statement where Big Pun says something bad about Fat Joe. I just want to see it. I want to see where Big Pun says something about Fat Joe. You never saw it. So of course, you know, it might be other things that come into effect in the aftermath, but I ain't never see Big Pun ever speak ill of Fat Joe, and vice versa. I didn't see it. So I'm asking you. You said he cloned his lifestyle. That was his brother. So let's get into it, right? Operational integration with enterprise network, right? UPNYC interacted closely with other enterprise entities, including Slate Inc. and subsidiary laundering vehicles such as Belidat LLC, Woo Inc., and R4 So Valid LLC through coordinated transfers of enterprise proceeds and fraudulent financial activity. It goes on to say fraudulent PPP uh, loan acquisition. Like Sneaker Addict Turin LLC, UPNYC engaged in fraudulent applications for pandemic era Paycheck Protection Program (PPP) loans, misrepresenting financial need, payroll obligations, and operational scope. Right now, let's get to this part. This part right here is where they talk about Rock Nation. And this is before I even get into the core allegations. And y'all smash the like button, share the video, like the video. We're going to go all the way in and talk about this situation, right? Now, right here, they're saying that Rock Nation LLC, strategic facilitator and aider of the racketeering activity, is what they're accusing Rock Nation of. Now, they're saying that in 2017, Rock Nation LLC entered into a management agreement with the defendant, Fat Joe Cartagena, and assumed exclusive control over his business affairs. From that point forward, Rock Nation functioned as defendant Cartagena, that's Fat Joe, operational command center, overseeing all touring, licensing, branding, music publishing, and commercial contracts, while affirmatively projecting his public image and shielding his financial operations from scrutiny. Now it goes on. Upon information and belief, Rock Nation was aware or willfully blind to the defendant Joe Cartagena's ongoing, right, criminal conduct, including forced labor, financial fraud, retaliatory violence, and sex trafficking. Despite the knowledge of multiple allegations and red flags, Rock Nation continued to facilitate defendant Joe Cartagena, Fat Joe, business interests, defend his public image, and structure deals that directly enriched the Cartagena enterprise. Rock Nation's racketeering related conduct includes number one, assuming managerial control over the defendant Fat Joe's tour, brand, and publishing rights in 2017 and continuing through the present. Number two, overseeing financial transactions derived from the plaintiff's uncredited performances and co-authored tracks, including All the Way Up and Congratulations, without providing accounting or ownership recognition. Number three, initiating or supporting retaliatory litigation against the plaintiff and his attorney after the plaintiff disclosed allegations of racketeering and trafficking constituting unlawful retaliation under 18 U.S.C. 1591D and 1513E. Next, number four, continuing to benefit and promote recordings, tours, and merchandise that originated from the enterprise's unlawful conduct. Number five, failing to disclose material information about known enforcers and threats, e.g. Pistol Pete, Rich Player, and suppressing evidence of coercive enterprise tactics. Now it goes on to say these actions constitute, number one, racketeering participation under 18 U.S.C. 1962C for aiding the affairs of an enterprise engaged in a pattern of racketeering activity. Number two, aiding and abetting violations under 18 U.S.C. number two by facilitating, endorsing, and profiting from known criminal conduct. Number three, retaliation under and obstruction under 18 U.S.C. 1513 and 1591 for strategic litigation and suppression campaigns aimed at chilling plaintiffs' protective activity. Number four, venture liability under 18 U.S.C. 1595 for knowingly benefiting from a sex trafficking venture over which they exercise oversight or control. And then he says Rock Nation's failure to intervene, investigate, or sever ties with the defendant Joe Cartagena, Fat Joe, after assuming managerial control in 2017, despite extensive evidence of coercive conduct, makes it both material beneficiary and a willful enabler of racketeering activity. Its continued participation in legal defense of defendant Cartagena's commercial interests represent knowing facilitation of the very enterprise structure that caused the plaintiffs harm. Now, we got to keep going. And again, these are all allegations. You understand what I'm saying? I want to say this again. These are all allegations. Innocent unless proven guilty in the court of law. And the reason why I say that is because Brianna Bongolan, who's in the Diddy trial, just went in open court and said she testified against Diddy, but she went in open court and said that she had to fire Tyrone Blackburn, this same lawyer, because she said Tyrone Blackburn lied in her lawsuit. I have to continue to put that out there. That's only fair. Now let's continue to keep going. Right? Now, as you can see, right? So, the plaintiff, Terrence Dixon, aka TA, by and through this undersigned counsel, TA, Blackburn Law, right? PLLC brings this civil action against defendants Joseph Antonio Cartagena, professionally known as Fat Joe, Pistol Pete, Pistol Pete Torres. The list goes on, right? Rock Nation, the list goes on. It says, right? Of certain civil claims for violation of the Trafficking Victims Protection Act, the Racketeer Influence and Corruption Acts, Organization Acts, and related violations under New York and Florida law, including unjust enrichment, quantum merit, fraudulent concealment, fraud, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and money laundering. This action arises from a deliberate and sustained campaign of exploitation wherein an internationally recognized entertainer manipulates and abuses a creative partner through an organized a network of enforcers, associates, and shell companies. Defendants systematically engage in coercive labor exploitation, financial fraud, sexual manipulation, violent intimidation, and psychological coercion against plaintiff Dixon, all intended to enrich defendant Joe Cartagena and his associates while deliberately suppressing, silencing, and erasing the plaintiff's substantial creative, artistic, and commercial contributions, which were foundational to defendant Joe Cartagena's professional success and personal brand. And I'm going to tell y'all the truth. It sounds like in this lawsuit, I'm just going to tell y'all what it sounds like, right? You tell me what you think. It sounds like that dude was only upset when he was left out financially. He's claiming they did all these bad things, but only when he was financially left out. Now he's putting all this stuff on blast. So does that mean if he would have got his money, that none of this stuff would have been important? Is that what that means? That's a question that have to be asked. That's a question that have to be asked. And I know y'all don't like it, but it's true. That have to be asked about the guy that's coming with these allegations. Are you only coming with these allegations because you want money? Because if it was about justice, I mean, was you down with it until you didn't get bread, allegedly? That right there is going to put a damper in a lot of stuff. People have to open their eyes and look at this stuff and be realistic and fair about this stuff, man. Because these are only allegations right now. Now, he says that this action arises from a calculated, sustained, and multi-layered exploitation of a creative partner by an internationally recognized entertainer, aided in by an extensive network of associates and corporate entities operating in concert to defraud, intimidate, and financially exploit the plaintiff. For more than 16 years, plaintiff Terrence Dixon, aka TA, dedicated his talent, labor, and loyalty to defendant Joseph Antonio Cartagena, professionally known as Fat Joe. During that period, the plaintiff acted not only as Fat Joe's hype man, but also contributed as a lyricist, background vocalist, security team member, and creative collaborator. Despite the plaintiff's integral contributions, defendant Fat Joe systematically excluded him from fair compensation, proper attribution, and substantial royalties and profits generated from his creative labor. Instead, the plaintiff was consistently underpaid, denied songwriting credits, and deliberately concealed from royalties and back-end compensation. Plaintiff Dixon contributed lyrics, vocal, and creative direction to numerous commercially successful songs performed and monetized by defendant Cartagena, including but not limited to hits Congratulations, Ice Cream, Money Over Bees. Dixon's creative fingerprints, distinctive voice, and stage presence are embedded in multiple critically acclaimed and commercially lucrative albums from which defendant Cartagena continues to profit without recognition or fair compensation to the plaintiff. Defendant Cartagena's exploitation extended beyond financial fraud. He employed his industry, influenced, and power dynamics to subject the plaintiff to psychological coercion and economic control, forcing the plaintiff into humiliating situations, including sex acts performed under duress and surveillance, accompanied by threats of abandonment in foreign countries if the plaintiff refused compliance. Also, the defendant Cartagena deliberately withheld travel accommodations, misappropriated per diem payments, and exploited plaintiffs' financial dependence and professional loyalty to ensure submission, silence, and domination. Also, he says assisting defendant Cartagena in maintaining his criminal enterprise were key associates and enforcers, including the defendant Pistol Pete Torres, defendant Richard Rich Player, Joe Spider. Torres and Joe Spider actively engaged in physical threats, violence assaults, and intimidation tactics on Cartagena's explicit instructions, sustaining a climate of fear and coercion against the plaintiff and others who challenged the enterprise's control. Defendant Erica Juliana further facilitated Fat Joe's fraudulent schemes through unauthorized legal representation, fraudulent corporate filings, and the creation of deceptive corporate structures that enabled the concealment and diversion of proceeds owed to plaintiffs and the laundering of illicit funds. Next, it says corporate defendants, Slate Inc., Sneaker Addict Touring LLC served as instrumental vehicles for the enterprise's sophisticated financial fraud and money laundering schemes. Slate Inc. operated as a central financial conduit, systematically concealing illicit proceeds. At the same time, Sneaker Addict Touring LLC fraudulently secured a federal paycheck PPP loans by falsifying business activities and diverting federal funds into the enterprise. Defendant Rock Nation LLC, the current management and representative entity for the defendant Fat Joe, knowingly participated in concealing, transferring, and manipulating the plaintiff's authorship rights and loyalty interests. Rock Nation deliberately facilitated Fat Joe's unlawful conduct by filing a meritless lawsuit against the plaintiff and his counsel to intimidate, harass, and obstruct the plaintiff's legal claims against Joe Cartagena and his co-defendants. Rock Nation, through its CEO, Desiree Perez, extracted 10% of all revenue generated by Fat Joe and his associated businesses, including through joint management of business records, oversight of touring revenue, and enforcement of policy plaintiff was required to follow during his work with the defendant. As an aside, according to an accountant Doe and former manager Doe, defendant Joe Cartagena, Fat Joe, stole hundreds of thousands of dollars from Rock Nation and their CEO, Desiree Perez, when he accepted cash payments for up to a $500,000 for performances he secured independent of Roc Nation. Upon information and belief, defendant Fat Joe's actions were against his agreement with Desiree Perez. Number 15, defendant Fat Joe alongside Torres, Joe Spider, Joe Spiter, Erica, Slate Inc., Sneaker Addict Touring, and Roc Nation created a sustained and deliberately exploitive arrangement in which the plaintiff was systematically denied proper compensation, authorship, recognition, and lawful recourse. Over more than 16 years, defendants collectively enriched themselves through the plaintiff's uncompensated labor, creativity, and professional contributions, generating substantial royalties, performance fees, and brand equity from which the plaintiff received virtually no benefit. Additionally, defendants, and smash the like button as y'all come on in. Let's get the likes up and share the video. Additionally, defendants engage in deliberate tax fraud schemes by submitting intentionally inflated and fraudulent income reports to the IRS, significantly overstating the actual compensation the plaintiff received. This deliberate misrepresentation of the plaintiff's income was designed to conceal the defendant's extensive wage theft, artificially inflate the plaintiff's tax liabilities, expose him to unwarranted tax audits and penalties, and systematically obscure the financial realities underlying the plaintiff's exploited labor. He also accuses and says that Fat Joe's criminal and fraudulent conduct is not speculative. It has been corroborated by firsthand witnesses, recorded phone calls, and documented evidence in the possession of accountant Doe, who personally handled the financial affairs of Fat Joe and confirmed that the plaintiff was intentionally excluded from formal payment systems. W-2s were falsely inflated and reported to the IRS to create a fictitious paper trail. Defendant Cartagena personally collected $600,000 and $200,000 in cash at different times from the UPNYC retail stores. Roc Nation received 10% on all revenue of Cartagena's businesses, and numerous financial records were fabricated or withheld to avoid paying the plaintiff the royalties and compensations he was owed, further confirming the illicit nature of defendant Fat Joe's operation. Employees at the UPNYC, a small sneaker apparel store, routinely flaunted luxury goods, including G-Wagons, Range Rovers, Rolexes, designer clothing, despite earning little more than New York's minimum wage. This conspicuous consumption, combined with large volumes of cash-only transactions and complete absence of legitimate revenue documentation, reflects the store's role as laundering front for the Cartagena enterprise. Defendant Cartagena earns an estimated $60,000 per month in royalties and at least $20,000 per month in streaming revenue, none of which has ever been shared with the plaintiff, despite his significant authorship and performance contributions to the monetized songs. In one documented instance, defendant Cartagena pocketed a $30,000 Live Nation performance check for All the Way Up tour money that was rightfully allocated for the plaintiff's contributions. Fat Joe used those funds to pay off his back taxes owed to the IRS, as confirmed by a witness who was a part of his management team at the time. The plaintiff was not only exploited financially, but also subjected to wide spectrum of sexual coercion, psychological control, forced exhibitionism, and surveillance-based humiliation, including being compelled to perform sex acts under observation, being filmed or directed by Fat Joe in the presence of others. Tactics designed to control the plaintiff's body, erode his anatomy, and oh my God, and ensure silence. Man, they was making you take it in the booty? Allegedly? Man, God. Y'all smash the like button, share the videos. Y'all come on in here, man. We getting into this, man. Uh, Good God. These sex-based abuses were not private, incidental, or isolated. They were integral to the enterprise's culture of dominance and humiliation enforced by Fat Joe's associates, such as Pistol Pete, JB, and others, and sustained across numerous tour locations, including Miami, North Carolina, Germany, Spain, and Wisconsin. In Miami, on Market America's corporate yacht, and in its mansion properties, the defendant orchestrated repeated orgies, the creation of fraudulent pay stubs, the use of W-2s while filing 1099s, and the concealing of payroll fraud for the enterprise gain are textbook RICO predicate acts under mail wire fraud and tax fraud statutes. The scheme furthers the enterprise's coercive structure and is directly tied to financial exploitation. The plaintiff, female dancers, and minors. Fat Joe used his status as a corporate sponsor, celebrity influence, and financial control to compel the plaintiff and others into degrading sexual performances, often while Fat Joe watched, Fat Joe recorded, or even directed these encounters. These incidents occurred under the conditions that included the presence of corporate security staff, surveillance cameras, and Fat Joe's management entourage. Yet no intervention occurred, supporting the interference that these acts were facilitated by and covered up by the broader enterprise and its affiliates. Fat Joe also used social media burner accounts, including BITTTGGGG and Dr. Zivag, to issue veiled death threats and witness intimidation, such as "You love your family, right?" Question mark. Fall back in 48 hours. We let you live. These statements were interpreted by the plaintiff and his legal team as a part of a broader scheme to intimidate, silence, and obstruct the plaintiff's participation in this case. These acts constitute violations of 18 U.S.C. 1512, witness tampering, and 18 U.S.C. 875, interstate threats, and fall squarely within the pattern of violent racketeering activity under the Civil RICO statute. In retaliation for asserting his rights, Roc Nation and defendant Fat Joe jointly filed a baseless lawsuit against the plaintiff and his counsel. The complaint, riddled with procedural defects and legal inaccuracies, was filed with the sole purpose of intimidating the plaintiff, diverting judicial resources, and chilling his First Amendment right to seek redress. The retaliatory lawsuit was intended not to prevail on legal merit, but to create public confusion, burden the plaintiff's counsel with discovery costs, and dissuade other victims and whistleblowers from coming forward with evidence of Fat Joe's enterprise activity. This conduct violates 42-1985, conspiracy to obstruct justice, New York judiciary, deceit or collusion by an attorney, and federal witness retaliation statutes under 18 U.S.C. 1512 and 3. As a part of a coordinated cover-up, Fat Joe allegedly submitted ghost contracts and backdated split sheets to performing rights organizations, PROs, including BMI and ASCAP, omitting the plaintiff's authorship credits. These records were created after the commercial release of the music and falsely assigned 100% publishing rights to Fat Joe and his business entities. The fraudulent documents were designed to mislead royalty agreement agencies divert back-end payments, and erase the plaintiff from the creative history of the works, even though the plaintiff's vocals and lyrical contributions were readily and identifiable on the tracks. These actions not only deprived the plaintiff of at least $600,000 in project royalties, but also ensured his exclusion from future licensing, catalog valuation, and digital revenue derived from streaming platforms. The fraudulent backdating and ghost contracts constitute predicate acts under 18 U.S.C. 1343 wire fraud, 18 U.S.C. 371 conspiracy, and New York Penal Law 17510 falsifying business records. The enterprise financial arm further engaged in systematic laundering and tax evasion as evidenced by repeated cash disbursements of over $200,000 to $600,000 at a time, withdrawn from UPNYC with no documented ledger, reporting mechanism, or tax compliance. Defendant Fat Joe post-conviction tax conduct included repeated failure to report foreign earnings, the use of nominee entities, and cash-based laundering through corporate fronts. Reflects the sophistication and scope of the enterprise's concealment strategies. These acts of structured concealment, misappropriation, and intimidation represent a pattern of criminal conduct carried out through an ongoing association and fact enterprise meeting all elements under 18 U.S.C. 1962 and supporting both closed-ended and open-ended continuity under Rico. And it keeps going. It keeps going. Let's go on to the next. Let's go on to the next. All right? And y'all smash the like button as y'all come on in the building. Salute to everybody that's in the building. I appreciate all y'all showing love. Tapping on in, right? Much love to everybody that's in the building, right? I salute to all of y'all. Everybody that's in here, man. Right? And so now we're going to get to his actual allegations, right? Because his allegations are crazy, bro. I mean, bro, these allegations are unbelievable, bro. Man, bro. I mean, bro, unbelievable stuff, man. This guy has alleged here, man. And again, Fat Joe's innocent. Fat Joe says that that this is false. These allegations are false. He says that this is a lie. This is not true. And so let's get to this part. So basically, y'all smash the like button, share the video, like the video, y'all. Salute to everybody in the building, man. Now, basically, it says that his role as a creative partner and uncompensated labor, right? So he says, the guy that's making the allegations, Terrence Dixon, he says from 2005 up until 2022 that he worked in close partnership with Fat Joe and key members of the Cartagena enterprise, including defendants Pistol Pete, Torres, Richard Rich Player, Joe Spider, Erica Juliana Moreira, Moriera, Slate Inc., Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, and Rock Nation LLC. Now, he says over 16 years that he contributed substantially to Fat Joe's creative output, stage shows, brand development, and operational logistics, enabling Fat Joe to build a multi-million-dollar public persona and enterprise. Now, he says that he undertook these responsibilities without a formal contract, clear employment designation, or fair compensation. These conditions, he say, were deliberately crafted and maintained by Fat Joe to extract labor while denying him the financial and reputational benefits of his work. Now, he says his role extended far beyond the duties of a conventional hype man. He consistently performed the following. He says that he co-wrote lyrics, structured hooks, recorded background vocals used on release tracks, performed more than 200 live shows, serving as a primary crowd energizer and on-stage counterpart to Fat Joe. He managed travel logistics, including equipment transport, personal security, and emergency arrangements. He said he acted as Fat Joe's bodyguard and handler during domestic and international tours. He says he contributed to branding strategies, music concepts, and studio uh, ideation critical to album development. Now, he says that Fat Joe and his enterprise, including Rock Nation, Slate Inc., Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, reaped substantial financial rewards from his uncompensated labor, profiting from his creative and operational contributions without providing proper credit or compensation. Now, he says that the defendants internationally withheld credit, royalties, back end profits, and publishing interests from the plaintiff, ensuring complete creative and financial control remains solely with the defendant Fat Joe and the enterprise. Now, he says that his unrecognized and unpaid labor thus became the solid foundation for Fat Joe's commercial success, leaving him economically disadvantaged and professionally invisible. Now, he says that he was recruited under the false promise of a creative partnership, but was instead systematically exploited through coercion, manipulation, and deception. Now, he says uncredited songwriting and false promises of royalties. He claims that throughout his work with Fat Joe, that he co-authored and performed on numerous commercial release songs, including but not limited to All the Way Up, Congratulations, Money Over Bees, Ice Cream, 300 Brolic, No Problems, and Winding on Me. Now, he says he contributed lyrics, melodies, vocal phrasing, and conceptual design to these works, substantially shaping their final form as distributed to the public. Now, he says despite his involvement, he was never listed in the official metadata, ASCAP, or BMI publishing credits, the Pro Records back-end royalty chains, or back-end royalty chains. He said instead, all the ownership and revenue rights were claimed by Fat Joe and companies he controlled or was affiliated with, including Slate Inc. and Sneaker Addict Touring LLC. Now, he says that Fat Joe and him negotiated the following compensation for his creative efforts, explicitly assuring him that he would receive 15% of ownership interest in every track which he contributed, 15% of gross earnings derived from those songs, insurance, right? No, issuance of letters of direction to secure royalty and publishing payments through performing rights organizations or PROs, right? Plaintiff, he's saying that reasonably relied on these assurances, continuing to contribute labor, lyrics, and creative insight to songs that generated substantial streaming revenue and public acclaim. He says, however, Fat Joe, Rock Nation, Slate Inc., and Erica deliberately failed to fulfill those promises. No letters of discretion were issued. Now, he says that he was not registered with any performing rights organization, and royalties and publishing payments owed to him were systematically withheld and diverted to the defendants. Now, he says that Fat Joe's conduct, affirmative misrepresentations followed by silence, exclusion, and deceit constitutes that not only fraudulent concealment, but also violations of the TVPA and civil Rico statutes, which prohibit coercive deception extraction for labor for commercial of labor for commercial gain. He says upon information and belief, Fat Joe currently receives more than $60,000 per month in publishing royalties, 20 G's per month in streaming revenues from the songs that he helped create. Yet he says that he has never received a single dollar in connection with those recordings. Now, in 2024, he says he discovered that Fat Joe was working with individuals, including Erica and others associated with Slate Inc., submitted falsified, backdated split sheets omitting his authorship. These records were used to divert royalty income and construct a paper trail that falsely attributed full publishing ownership to Fat Joe and his designated entities. Now, he says these ghost contracts and falsified submissions were designed to retroactively exclude, him from economic participation while preserving the outward appearance of clean title. Now, he says the resulting injury is twofold. He says that he was deprived of economic compensation and eased from the industry records, foreclosing future collaboration opportunities and denying him a public acknowledgement of his artistic contributions. Now, the wrongful conduct extended beyond music publishing. It affected every aspect of his business, Fat Joe's business dealings with the plaintiff, from touring earnings to merchandise deals, studio credit, licensing arrangements. He says the systematic nature of these misrepresentations and omissions and the duration over which they occur satisfies the scheme or artifice to defraud. Now he says standard, right? Right? Standard under federal wire fraud statutes and reinforces plaintiff's Rico under 18 USC 1962-1964C. Now he says as late as 2022 that Fat Joe continued to assure him that the payments will be forthcoming, that things take time, and that they got your info already. He says, but the repeated delays were intended to lull the plaintiff into continued loyalty while the enterprise reaped the financial rewards of the labor. Now, he says it was only after multiple insiders, including an accountant, began coming forward in 2024 that the plaintiff learned the full extent of the fraud. Now, he says that Fat Joe and Roc Nation, who took over the management of his business affairs in 2017, knew or should have known about the omissions of the plaintiff from the royalty structures and falsehoods embedded in the publishing records. Now, he says Roc Nation exercised operational control over Fat Joe's catalog, managed the flow of royalties, and received a 10% cut of all business revenue generated by Fat Joe and his companies. They had the means, access, authority to rectify the omissions, but instead ratified and concealed them, he alleges. Now, he says from 2017 through the end of his tenure, Roc Nation appointed a director to whom he reported. He said this relationship qualifies under the joint employer doctrine and supports the plaintiff's claim that Roc Nation knowingly participated in exploitive arrangement. Now, he goes on to say, as one of the filings in his complaint, he remains wholly executed from every royalty stream tied to the songs he helped create. Now, he said his professional identity as a lyricist and co-author has been suppressed in service of Fat Joe's economic domination and maintenance of a fraudulent authorship narrative. Now, misappropriation of performance and fees and per diems. Now, he says throughout his tenure, Fat Joe and his enterprise, including defendants Roc Nation, Slate Inc., Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, Rich Player, and Accountant Doe, deliberately misappropriated substantial sums contractually designated for his services at performances and public appearances. Now, he says these allocations were excluded, my bad, you guys. He said they were explicitly excluded right? Y'all smash the like button. Y'all come on in here too. Salute to everybody that's in the building. Man, I see how y'all in there, man. Y'all know what's up, man. Appreciate everybody that's in the building, right? Love, honor, respect. Yeah, I see y'all. Salute everybody. Y'all smash the like button, man. Y'all, let's get those likes up over 2,000 likes, man. Let's get those likes up over 2,000 likes, man. Yeah, let's get over 2,000 likes, y'all. Get the likes up, man. The like button is free. The like button is free, right? That's free. But he says these allocations were explicitly included in booking contracts, performance riders, and event agreements executed by the defendants, right? Now let's keep going. Performance agreements routinely and explicitly allocated approximately $3,000 per show for the specific role performed by the plaintiff as the defendant, Fat Joe's primary hype man and creative stage presence. Now, upon information and belief, on one occasion, Fat Joe pocketed $30,000 payment from Live Nation earmarked for All the Way Up tour and used it to pay off his personal IRS tax liabilities rather than compensate the plaintiff. He says, upon information and belief, Fat Joe and the other defendants instructed his accountant to fabricate wage statements and inflate W-2s submitted to the IRS to make it appear as though plaintiff was paid appropriately, while in fact he was underpaid or paid off the books. It says, despite these explicit contractual provisions, the defendants systematically paid the plaintiff only a fraction of this amount, typically only $250 per show, delivered informally in cash payments, often without appropriate tax documentation or formal financial records. It says that the plaintiff was intentionally kept unaware of these contractually obligated payments, as defendants deliberately withheld access to booking agreements, financial statements, contracts, and records of performance fees. Now, he says that he was thereby prevented from discovering the true extent of the defendant's financial manipulations and his rightful entitlement to compensation. In addition to performance fees, he says the plaintiff was consistently entitled to receive a daily per diem payments, contractually set up approximately at $100 per day, intended explicitly to cover food, lodging, and travel-related expenses. Now, across approximately 200 performances and appearances, these per diem payments amounted to over $60,000. The defendants unlawfully retained and diverted these per diem funds, depriving the plaintiff of resources specifically allocated for his basic personal and professional needs. Now, he says due to the defendant's intentional misappropriation of the plaintiff's compensation and per diem payments, that he routinely endures severe financial hardship and substandard living conditions while touring. Now, he also said that he frequently had to cover expenses out of pocket, staying in inadequate and unsafe lodging, and travel under harsh conditions, including long waits in airports or sleeping in lobbies in public areas. Now, in stark contrast, he says Fat Joe and his inner circle traveled in luxury, flying first class, staying at premium hotels, and dining lavishly at his expense, the plaintiff's expense. Now, he said the defendants actively maintained this deliberate financial disparity to reinforce the plaintiff's economic vulnerability, dependency, and silence, ensuring compliance through economic coercion and manipulation. Now, it says that the defendants, including Rock Nation, Slate Inc., and Sneaker Addict Touring LLC, facilitated and profited from these schemes through fraudulent financial structuring and accounting practices overseen by defendant accountant Jane Doe or John Doe. He said financial records were deliberately manipulated to conceal these unlawful diversions of the plaintiff's contractually obligated compensation, enabling ongoing fraudulent financial reporting, tax manipulation, and unjust enrichment of the defendants. Now, he said this deliberate, systematic financial exploitation represents a coordinated pattern of fraud, theft, and economic coercion that substantially enriched Fat Joe and his associates at the plaintiff's direct expense, causing the plaintiff sustained financial harm, economic vulnerability, and emotional distress. Now he talks about the coercive control and the psychological manipulation and threats of harm. Now he claims that Fat Joe's control over him extended far beyond financial exploitation or denial of credit. He said over 16 years, Fat Joe cultivated a deliberate environment of psychological manipulation, intimidation, and persistent threats to ensure the plaintiff's continued submission, silence, and loyalty despite ongoing abuse, exploitation, and humiliation. Now, he says the defendant Cartagena warned the plaintiff with chilling explicitness, repeatedly saying, "Nobody leaves Terror Squad in one piece." Also, he says he often reinforced this threat, Fat Joe, by openly referencing former associates who had suffered violent reprisals after falling out of favor. For example, Fat Joe explicitly invoked the notorious assault on Luis Cuban Link T-Bond, who was viciously attacked, permanently scarred, and publicly humiliated following his departure from Fat Joe's inner circle. These statements were not mere idle threats or exaggerations. They constituted explicit and calculated warnings deliberately issued to the plaintiff to convey that any act of resistance, disloyalty, or demand for fair treatment would be inevitably lead to severe physical harm, public disgrace, personal sabotage, or even worse. He says through these sustained and credible threats, Fat Joe intentionally reinforced the message that the plaintiff had no viable path to safety, exit their working relationship, or demand rightful compensation without facing devastating personal consequences. Now, he says Fat Joe methodically cultivated an atmosphere, right, where fear or violent retaliation, abandonment abroad, and career destruction permeated the plaintiff's daily experience, effectively destroying any notion of of autonomy or genuine choice. Now, he says that his working conditions were oppressive and unpredictable, deliberately designed to amplify his vulnerability and dependency. He says that Fat Joe employed persistent verbal abuse, threats of physical violence, erratic and insufficient payment, manipulative control over travel and accommodations, and continuous humiliation. He said collectively these coercive tactics resulted in chronic emotional and psychological distress, profound anxiety, and severe trauma that continue to affect the plaintiff to this day. Now, he says that he was systematically denied basic security or stability, with Fat Joe frequently threatening to strand him in foreign countries, locations, without resources or assistance. On multiple occasions, these threats became a reality, leaving the plaintiff stranded and without access to adequate food, shelter, or safe transit home, further intensifying his fear, insecurity, and forced dependency. Now, he says the consistent invocation of past acts of violence by Fat Joe, such as the brutal attack on Cuban Link, was an intentional strategy that the defendant purposely leveraged these prior violent incidents to establish the credibility and immediacy of his threats, effectively placing the plaintiff in a constant state of apprehension and psychological captivity. He also says the looming threat of physical harm was not hypothetical but concrete, continuously reinforced by explicit verbal warnings and visible reminders of prior violent acts. He says the cumulative psychological harm inflicted upon the plaintiff by the defendant Fat Joe's coercive methods was profound and lasting. Over 16 years, he said Fat Joe's sustained use of intimidation, violent threats, emotional manipulation, economic control, and forced isolation resulted in him suffering severe emotional injuries, including chronic anxiety, debilitating fear, symptoms consistent with PTSD, loss of self-esteem, and lasting damage to his mental and emotional well-being. Now, he says that Fat Joe's use of violence threats and psychological intimidation was a calculated tactic, integral to maintaining control over him and securing ongoing submission and compliance. Now, he says that the methods of coercion went far beyond mere workplace disputes or contractual disagreements, constituting explicit acts of extortion, intimidation, and forced labor. He says each threat, warning, and act of psychological manipulation was deliberate, reinforcing defendants' dominance and perpetuating plaintiffs' involuntary labor in silence. Collectively, these coercive tactics demonstrate a calculated and sustained pattern of psychological and emotional abuse intentionally implemented by Fat Joe and his associates to maintain the plaintiff's exploitation, submission, and silence. Now he talks about the sexual exploitation and humiliation under distress. He says, and he alleges that in addition to systematic financial exploitation and relentless psychological abuse, that Fat Joe deliberately subjected him to repeated and severe sexual coercion, manipulation, and humiliation, which further deepened Fat Joe's total control over the plaintiff's autonomy, physical safety, and labor. Throughout the plaintiff's 16-year period, working closely with Fat Joe, the plaintiff was routinely coerced, engaging in sexual acts with women brought by Fat Joe to hotel rooms and private gatherings, he alleges, following performance and studio events. Now, he says that Fat Joe frequently arranged and orchestrated these encounters, intentionally creating scenarios designated to reinforce his complete submission. Now, he says that Fat Joe regularly monitored these encounters closely. Frequently, Fat Joe, he alleges, remained in the room to watch, record, or provide explicit direction and commands. He also claims that he did not willingly consent to participate in these acts. Instead, he submitted solely out of fear of immediate retaliation, which Fat Joe repeatedly demonstrated would include financial punishment, professional sabotage, abandonment in foreign countries, or physical harm. He said on at least one occasion, he explicitly resisted participating in a coerced sexual encounter arranged by Fat Joe. He said Fat Joe immediately retaliated by canceling his scheduled flight home, deliberately stranding him without money, shelter, or support, thereby internationally placing him in an isolated, unsafe, and highly vulnerable position abroad. He said these calculated and repeated acts of sexual coercion served a clear purpose in Fat Joe's enterprise, reinforcing his ongoing subordination, obedience, and silence through humiliation, fear, and psychological domination. Sexual compliance became a condition of his continued employment, access to essential resources, safe travel, and basic human dignity. Now, he says that Fat Joe's use of coercive sex acts, underpinned by the threat of job loss, abandonment, or physical harm, meets the definition of sex trafficking by coercion under 18 USC 1591. Now, he says sexual acts were induced not by choice, but by fear, dependency, and fraud. Each encounter, he said, carried an unspoken message: refuse and you lose everything. The plaintiff says that he estimates that over 16 years, he was coerced in more than 4,000 sexual acts to maintain his standing within this empire. Now, he says that Fat Joe used these acts not merely for gratification, but as a control mechanism by degrading him repeatedly in front of others. He undermined the plaintiff's autonomy, silenced his resistance, and made him emotionally and physically dependent on his approval. Now, he says the psychological toll was immense. He says that the plaintiff, he developed symptoms consistent with PTSD, including flashbacks, intrusive thoughts, panic attacks, and emotional detachment. He remains in trauma-informed therapy and continues to experience debilitating anxiety. Now, he said these experiences were not private or confidential. He says enterprise members, including JB, Raul, Pistol Pete, and security staff, routinely witnessed and participated in these coercive dynamics. Now, he also says Rock Nation, which assumed managerial control of Fat Joe's business operations in 2017, had ample opportunity to detect, disrupt, or report these patterns of abuse. Instead, he said it enabled and they enabled and benefited from them, earning commissions, royalties, and reputational capital off the back of his silence. Now, he says the forced sexual conduct described in this section, coupled with the economical manipulation and verbal threats, form textbook example of sex trafficking under federal law, warranting treble damages, injunctive relief, and criminal referral under 18 U.S.C. 1591 and 1595. Now, he talks about forced homosexuality pretty much and enterprise sexual culture. Now, he alleges that Fat Joe's coercive control over him was not limited to financial manipulation and abandonment. He claims that Fat Joe routinely employed verbal intimidation and psychological threats to maintain submission. Now, he says, as previously stated, Fat Joe frequently told the plaintiff that no one exit Terror Squad in one piece, a chilling phrase meant to reinforce the consequences, right, of disloyalty or challenging his authority, right? Now, he says that the defendant, Fat Joe, repeatedly referenced what happened to Cuban Link, former Terror Squad artist, who was physically assaulted and slashed across the face, leaving him with a permanent nerve damage and visible scarring. Now, he says this reference was not abstract, that Fat Joe pointedly reminded him of the physical consequences that could accompany disobedience or separation. Now, he said these statements were made in moments of dispute or tension, particularly when the plaintiff raised issues of compensation. Now, he said the message was clear: if you cross me, you'll end up like them. He alleges that these threats and context serve to reinforce a climate of fear, submission, and dependency, depriving the plaintiff of his agency and reinforcing the defendant's psychological dominance tactics that directly supported the plaintiff's claim for forced labor under the TVPA and establish a factual basis for emotional distress and trauma. Now, he says forced sex acts under duress and surveillance. He says beyond coerced sexual acts, Fat Joe forced him into repeated acts of public exhibitionism designed to degrade and exert control under the guise of loyalty tests and group bonding rituals. Now, he says Fat Joe routinely orchestrated sexually coercive scenarios in which the plaintiff was compelled to engage in sexual acts with women brought to hotel rooms following live performances, tour events, and private studio sessions. Now, he says these incidents were carefully arranged by the defendant and occurred in environments fully controlled by him. And he says in many instances, he remained present during these encounters, watching, recording, or issuing verbal commands and commentary. Now, he says that one occasion in Miami after a concert, Fat Joe brought a woman back to his hotel suite. He ordered the plaintiff to sleep with her in front of the group, insisting a bathroom door stay open and shouting, "Get your DICK hard, TA." Now, he says that members of the enterprise, including JB and Pistol Pete, stood in the room watching and laughing, with one individual remarking, "Yo, Joe, I'm not about to stand here and watch this ninja's DIC blank." The plaintiff did not participate willingly. His compliance was driven by a credible and persistent threat of retaliation, including the loss of income, removal from the tour, or public humiliation. When the plaintiff attempted to resist or assert boundaries, the defendant swiftly retaliated. The plaintiff's pay was withheld, his travel plans were abruptly canceled, or he was threatened with abandonment in foreign countries without access of money, shelter, or safe passage home. These tactics were designed to fulfill or to instill fear and reinforce defendant's total control over the plaintiff's body and behavior. Roc Nation, which assumed management of the defendant's affair in 2017, either knew or should have known of these repeated high-profile incidents. The events took place at branded venues, involved staff under Roc Nation supervision, and were discussed openly in touring circles. Despite this, Roc Nation took no disciplinary action, performed no internal audits, and continued to collect commissions, royalty, and brand equity derived from the defendant's public persona, built on a part of the backs of the individuals like the plaintiff who were sexually humiliated into submission. Now, these acts constitute further violations under the Trafficking Victims Act, a Prosecution Act, 18 U.S.C. 1589, as well as under 18 U.S.C. 241, and multiple provisions of New York and Florida sexual abuse statutes. They also serve as racketeering predicates under 18 U.S.C. and 1961 1B, representing a pattern of sexual exploitation used by Fat Joe's enterprise to exert control and retaliate against noncompliance. The plaintiff suffered severe psychological damage in these episodes, including suicidal ideation, disassociation, and complex trauma. He continues to receive treatment for PTSD and lives in constant fear of retaliation. And it goes on. And salute to everybody that's tapped on in. This thing gets even crazier, y'all. Smash the like button as y'all come on in. If you guys have not shared the video, smash the like button, y'all. Share the video, like the video. This thing gets even crazier, bro. Unbelievable stuff, man. And we're gonna get into it. It gets crazier, y'all. So let's get into it. And y'all smash the like button. How many likes we got? Somebody tell me how many likes we got in the comments, man. Because we about to this next part is crazier, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? Now, Fat Joe, again, he's denying all this. And Fat Joe is saying this is not true. These are lies and this is fabricated, is what Fat Joe is saying. And if you guys want to donate, the link is pinned at the top of the chat. Salute to everybody who donates to the stream. I appreciate all of y'all. Love, honor, and respect. Y'all know what it is. Let's get over 2,000 likes, y'all. Let's get those likes over 2,000. Now, it says the deliberate orchestration of these acts paired with enterprise-wide complicity, right? Retaliation, right? For resistance and ongoing threats reinforces the notion that these were not one-off abuses, but integral to the culture of functioning of the enterprise. Each episode of forced sexual performance, humiliation, or public coercion constitutes a separate predicate act under the TVPA and Rico, entitling the plaintiff to compensatory, punitive, and injunctive relief. Now it says the pattern described herein mirrors established sex trafficking prosecutions where coercion, fraud, and power dynamics were used to extract sexual compliance and suppress whistleblowing. Now it says that Fat Joe's actions violated not only federal criminal statutes, but fundamental human decency. He conducted his conduct rendered plaintiff a victim of commercial sexual exploitation by coercion, a core violation of the TVPA, and a cornerstone of Fat Joe's enterprise power structure. Now he says that Fat Joe's pattern and practice of trafficking like conduct. Now he says this, and it gets worse, y'all. His allegations. He says that Fat Joe's conduct towards him was not isolated uh, deviation, but a part of a broader, deliberate pattern of abusive control. Now, he says, upon information and belief, Fat Joe has employed similar coercive tactics to dominate and exploit other subordinate artists, staff, and creative collaborators within his circle. Now, he said that these tactics include financial isolation, deprivation of basic resources, manipulation of travel and lodging arrangements, systematic extraction, unpaid creative labor, and in some cases, coerced sexual compliance under arranged or demanded for Fat Joe's gratification or public image management. Now, he says this method of operation reveals an established structure of the exploitation in which Fat Joe exercises full control over the lives, careers, bodies, and identities of those who work closest to him. And he said it is precisely this structure that forms the basis for the trafficking related counts alleged in his complaint. Now, he says the pattern is not incidental, it's systemic, coordinated, and integral to Fat Joe's personal and professional enterprise. Now, he says that Fat Joe's enterprise use of violent and threatening coded languages. Now, he says the key element in Fat Joe's enterprise operations was the strategic use of coded language to communicate threats, issue directives, and conceal violent and coercive acts. He said this language was intentionally crafted to mask the true nature of the enterprise communications from outsiders, law enforcement, and the industry professionals. Now, he says that he alleges that Fat Joe and his senior associates regularly use phrases and terms that function as internal codes of direct violence, sexual coercion, and intimidation and other illicit conduct. This included, he said, the Dern, who's Fat Joe or the fat guy, the Don, which is Fat Joe, he says, bunches, which targeted females referred to as bitches, payops, coerced or violent sexual acts, cowpea, to physically assault or slap, cooling, rectum or anus, ketchup, stabbing or slashing, matarin, kill them or him, theory, baby mother, hold on, y'all, baby mother, wife, girlfriend, and corping, to place a victim in a casket. Now, he said these terms were used in text messages, in personal conversations, studio banner, and back channel communications to direct enforcers, silence distancers, uh, dissenters, and coordinate enterprise activities across geographic locations. The coded language was essential to maintaining the structure's secrecy while allowing the most extreme forms of coercion and violence to be ordered and executed without exposing the enterprise to immediate scrutiny. Now, he says that this internal lection not only reflects the deliberate concealment of criminal activity, but further establishes the organized, hierarchical, and methodical nature of the enterprise's operations. Lord have mercy there. It gets bad now, y'all. Now, he puts pictures in this lawsuit, y'all. He puts pictures in the alleged photos in this lawsuit of minors, okay? And I can't show it on the screen. I will not show this on this screen, right? Now, he said Fat Joe's penance for exploitation was not limited to artists and collaborators. Now, he says throughout his time working for Fat Joe, he says that he personally witnessed Fat Joe engage in sexual relations with children who were 15 and 16 years old. Now, he says minor dope number one. And Fat Joe has vehemently denied this. He says minor number one, dope number one, is a 16-year-old Dominican girl residing in New York. Now, he says in exchange for cash, clothing, and payment for a cell phone bill, Fat Joe would get oral sex and other sexual acts performed on him by this girl, allegedly. Now, he says on one occasion while driving to New York that this girl asked Fat Joe for money to pay for her cell phone. Now, he says being notoriously cheap, Fat Joe claimed to be broke. Now, he said this upset the girl, who began yelling, cursing, and screaming. Now, she said that he begged Fat Joe to pay her phone bill, which was less than $100. Now, minor number two, Jane Doe. And he puts a picture of this girl, right? Alleged girl. And it's a picture, but I will not put this picture up here. These are allegations. Again, Fat Joe has vehemently denied these allegations. Now, he says that this is a Caucasian female. She is not a United States citizen. Now, he says that Fat Joe began having sexual relationships with her when she was 15 at a concert overseas. Now, she says that Fat Joe flew her to New York and to Miami on multiple occasions. Now, he says due to her body being adolescent and not fully formed, he paid for her to get a BBL, allegedly. Now, he also says that he eventually left, she eventually left Fat Joe and is now married to a pro athlete. So he says that this girl eventually left Fat Joe and she's now married to a professional athlete. Who that is, I have no idea. But he put the picture up here, and he marked out. He got a picture up here, and what you call it. Now, he also has a picture of alleged minor number 3. Multiple pictures allegedly of her. Now, he says that these were pictures of her and her friends from high school the same time she was allegedly being trafficked by Fat Joe. Now, he put those pictures up. He put multiple pictures up. These are allegations. Fat Joe has denied this. Now, he says that this girl, the third girl, is a Latino female who met Fat Joe when she was 15, turning 16. Now, according to the plaintiff, Fat Joe was in love with this girl. He even contemplated leaving his wife for her. Now, he says that Fat Joe allegedly paid all of her bills and even took her overseas to his tour stops. He brought her to Florida, will put her up in a condo. He rented a few blocks from his house with his wife. Now, he says in a recorded conversation that this girl and her 15-year-old cousin described in detail to the plaintiff how inappropriate it was for Fat Joe, who was in his late 30s at the time, to be fawning over children. Now, he says he has a recorded conversation of this. Whether this is true or not, I have no idea. He says he has a recorded conversation. Fat Joe has completely denied this, 1,000%. He also says that Fat Joe sees no shame in his depravity towards children. Now, he says that Fat Joe has demonstrated a disturbing lack of remorse or discretion regarding his predatory behavior. Rather than conceal his actions, he has, on multiple occasions, alluded to or openly referenced sexual inappropriate conduct in his personal persona, in his public persona and artist output. He says in a song titled "She's My Mama," Fat Joe delivers lyrics that, when considered in context, reflect an unhealthy and troubling fixation on underage individuals. He says the context of the song is explicit, suggestive, and disturbingly detailed. Now, he says that Fat Joe uses it to normalize, romanticize, or even boast about the behavior that aligns with the pattern of coercion and exploitation described throughout this complaint. Now, he asserts that these lyrical references are not fictionalized or abstract, but from a part of a larger pattern in which Fat Joe used his platform and music to project, excuse, and reinforce the abuse of power and boundary violations that have marked his conduct towards the plaintiff and others under his influence, right? Now he says in the relevant part in this track, Fat Joe allegedly says on the song, now she was only 16. I had to nurture that, give her some growth, waited till I touched the cat, told she gonna have to work if she gonna get ahead. Then she drove me berserk when she gave me some head. She told me that she was learned from the porno flicks. I said, Mommy, stop talking. Just on this. I ain't say her name yet. So let's say she's nothing. Now watch me turn this nothing into something. Get it? Mommy, get in the kitchen. This is free. Just cook it till it's hard. Then cut it into eighths. Take the trip cross town to see. True, just get the money. Don't listen to that nigga think he cute. See all this money we got? We going shopping. Louis Vuitton and Gucci, we get it popping. We hit the club on some Clico. See the respect that you get from just being my look. See them, they sick. They want to be in your shoes. That's the game that I hit her with to leave her confused. I'm just using her for paper. She want a man. I'm about to see my other bitch, but she understands. Now, he says that based on the information and belief, She's My Mama was written about this girl who confirms engaging in many other acts outlined in the lyrics above. Furthermore, he claims that this girl was required to hold jewelry, drugs, and other questionable items that are illegal to be in a child's possession when she traveled with Fat Joe. Now, he claims that the defendant's transportation of sexual intercourse with these minors constitute violations of the following New York State, Florida federal laws. New York sex trafficking as defined in paragraphs A and B, uh, uh, subdivision 5, section 23034, sex trafficking of a child as defined in section 23034, all word and the third degree as defined in penal law, and Florida, unlawful sexual activity with certain minors, Florida statute 79405. Now, number 3, he says the Federal Mann Act, 18 USC 2421, and he says Section 2423 as amended in the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act. Now, he says defendant Fat Joe covers up Andre Dre and Christopher Lyon from Cool and Dre's statutory R word of K Rose. Now, he says that he posts a picture in his lawsuit of the producer Dre, uh, Fat Joe, Diddy, and DJ Khaled. Now he says K Rose was a 15-year-old singer signed to Epidemic Records, a label owned by Andre Dre Christopher Lyon. Now he says from the beginning of the relationship, Dre began grooming K Rose and started having sexual encounters with the child in the studio after her parents dropped her off to record. He's alleging. Now he says the statutory R word of K Rose lasted for close to a year. Now he says, according to the plaintiff, one night, he says that Fat Joe walked into the studio and Dre was screaming, "I'm going to jail, Joe, I'm going to jail." They found out, meaning her parents found out I was dealing with it. Now, according to the plaintiff, this girl's parents threatened to lock Dre up. And he says, Fat Joe says, "Calm down, I'm going to take care of it." He said Fat Joe kept allegedly saying that. Now, he says, based on information and belief, Fat Joe used his burner phone to send this girl's parents a message. K Rose's career fizzled out, and she was rarely heard from ever again, right? Is what he claims, right? Now, now he also talks about alleged coordinated retaliation attempts, enterprise by enterprise members Pistol Pete and Rich Player, is what he said, right? Now he shows a picture of these alleged guys in his lawsuit, but again, these are allegations. Now he says, following the plaintiff's efforts uh, to disclose the coercive, fraudulent, and abusive operations of Fat Joe and the criminal enterprise he leads, senior members of Fat Joe's enterprise launched a calculated and premeditated campaign of retaliation designed to intimidate, isolate, and silence the plaintiff. Their actions were driven by fear, and plaintiff's disclosures would expose them to illegal liability, public condemnation, and criminal prosecution. Now, he said this retaliation was not limited to verbal threats or reputational smears. It was deliberately operationalized through direct and coordinated outreach to a mutual associate named Percy, an individual who at the time remained loosely affiliated with the enterprise and maintained regular contact with the plaintiff. Now he says defendants Pete for Pistol Pete and Rich Player, two of the defendants, Fat Joe's most trusted enforcers, contacted Percy with the explicit goal of leveraging his relationship with the plaintiff to facilitate a violent setup. Now it says that defendants saw Percy as a potential conduit to lure the plaintiff into a confrontation under false pretenses. Now they say that the objective of the setup was clear: to deliver a violent reprisal, either a brutal physical assault or potential execution. Now, the motive was equally clear: to punish the plaintiff for speaking out and to deter any further revelations that could damage Fat Joe or implicate the enterprise in criminal wrongdoing. Now, he goes on to say and allege he has recordings of this, right? Now, he says in a recorded conversation, defendant Torres explicitly invoked loyalty to Fat Joe, characterizing the plaintiff's truth-telling as unforgivable betrayal. Now, Torres stated unequivocally that the plaintiff needs to get dealt with and urged Percy to arrange an in-person meeting under false pretenses. The planned violence was framed not as a personal dispute, but as a necessary act of internal discipline and enterprise protection. So the call allegedly starts with Pistol Pete. And he says, I called you to try to get his number. And then a guy named Percy allegedly says this is the recording that they said they have, and they actually did the printout of the recording, right? So I'll just read what he wrote in the recording. So it's Pistol Pete and Percy that's allegedly talking. So Pistol Pete says, I tried to call you to get his number, right? And then he says, all right. And I called him, and he don't want you to have his number because he said you ain't been calling him. What you calling him for? And then Pistol Pete allegedly says, no, that's fine. He right. As long as he keep himself away, as he don't come around the hood, because he can't come around the hood. It's all good. My loyalty is to Joe. My thing is, if he violated Joe and you F with Joe, I would expect and think that Percy's loyalty is to Joe, according to Joe. Percy says, my loyalty don't got to be questioned here. Never, not one time. You went on the internet and violated Joe. Nobody pounded you out. What are you talking about? Pistol Pete says, nobody ever violated Joe. What are you talking about? Percy said, yes, you did. You went on the internet, you violated Joe, and you violated Khaled. You forgot? Did you forget? Pistol Pete said, Khaled, yes, but I never violated Joe. He said, Percy says, you violated Joe too, bro. You violated Joe too. Pistol Pete says, it was Khaled that I was talking about. Percy says, don't do that. Pistol Pete said, it was Khaled. I could do whatever I want. Percy says, no, I'm telling you, you could do that with them, bro. But don't talk to shit like that. Pistol Pete says, no, I'm just telling you because I'm expecting your loyalty to be towards. Percy says, my loyalty is not in question here, bro. Pistol Pete says, Perce, listen, I'm only talking to you, Perce, because Joe was like, yo, nah, it's crazy. Perce's loyalty is to me. Nah, give him a call. I'm just telling you because I respect this, what I'm saying as a fan base. I'm not trying to tell you, yo, do this, do that. You know what I'm saying? Percy says yes, allegedly, but you're trying. He says allegedly says yes, but you're trying to tell me to line the nigga up. That don't even make sense. I don't know who thought in their mind that I was going to do that. And then Pistol P says, no, I'm just saying though, listen, if a nigga violate anybody, that my niggas gonna bring it right to where you at. I ain't gonna lie. My niggas gonna bring it, my niggas gonna bring them right to me. My hood is gonna bring it right over there. Why? Like they always done. Why? A nigga got dealt with accordingly. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm saying. Percy says yes. If somebody other than TA, Pistol Pete allegedly says going to kill. Percy says, listen to me. If it was somebody other than TA, yes, but TA was a part of the family, bro. That nigga's not. He's going through what he's going through, and maybe he shouldn't just the way he did it. I told him, hold on, you gotta listen to me. I told him, hold on. Pistol Pete says I put the nigga on. He never gave me $1. I let him fly. Percy says, and this is all alleged from the phone call conversation that he says he has recorded. He says, Percy says he didn't have $1 to give you. What are you talking about? And Pistol P says, no, he had plenty, bro. He was getting paid thousands of dollars when he went overseas, bro. He lying. And Percy says he wasn't getting paid no money when, and Pistol P said, yes, he was, bro. Yes, he was. Percy says, you wasn't around. I was around. You wasn't around, Pete. Pistol P says, Purse. I know, Purse. Percy says, you wasn't around, Pete. I was around. You wasn't around. Remember, you wasn't around. You wasn't here. You was in Miami, bro, so don't do that. Pistol Pete was like, yo, listen, when I'm asking about my money, trust me, a lot of shit came up. Oh, no, we giving that nigga this amount of money, and I used to talk to TA, right? And so TA says, got right now, no, she's not TA. He said, I used to talk to TA. He says, TA got right now, they just gave you this amount of money. He said, yes, but I had to pay this. I had to pay that. I couldn't do it. I'm only getting paid $1,000. It's hard because I had to pay my rent. How could I get your 20%? Damn. Please, Jeff, give me a break. I was like, all right, TA, I understand that you need it. He was getting paid more than what he said to you all. Purse, he is lying. He told me. Percy said, there's a lot of lying going on around here, bro. That's why I stay out of that shit. That's why I stay out of everybody's business, but right is right. He's feeling how he's feeling. Bro, this conversation allegedly goes on. Pistol Pete allegedly says, yes, but he's wrong. He's not right. He's wrong. Percy says, is he wrong for doing how he doing it? I don't know if he's wrong because he didn't holler at Joe. Joe curved him. Joe ain't want to hear nothing he was talking about. You know what I'm saying? Then now this is his option. This is how he needs to handle it. Is he right for doing it that way? I don't totally agree with him. I tried to stop him. He wanted to do it his way. I can't do nothing about that. I don't never tell me bring a nigga to you. I'm not never doing that. I'm not never doing that. Pistol P says, no, I'm just saying, though, listen, I know I will. If a nigga violate Percy and he around me, what? My nigga, you violating who? Oh, no. Get in the car, bro. You gonna get deal with Percy right now, buddy. Percy said, yeah, but Pistol P allegedly said, I don't give a nigga. I'm a real nigga from the trenches for real. I'm not gonna let him violate my nigga. Percy was like, yo, he only think he said he won his money for his music that he wrote. I didn't see him say nothing about Joe pay off his, and that was inaudible and all that. How you know, Pete? You wasn't there. And Pete says, you know how nigga be in the studio, nigga be the studio person? Because I have done it. I have been to the studio where I gave a nigga a line or two. Yo, say this. This is a nice line right here. Percy says, Pete, you wasn't there, Pete. You wasn't there, so you can't talk on what you don't know. Pete says, a lot of us wasn't there. Percy said, I was there. Pete says, what? You was there for one step? Percy said, I was there every time. Pistol Pete said, you not for that one. I was there all the time for the song, bro. Percy says, Pete, no, you wasn't, bro. You wasn't there. None of y'all was around, technically. None of y'all was around. Pistol Pete was like, yo, Percy. But he never wrote the song. Percy says, if you want to be technical, none of y'all was around if you want to be technical. Pistol P was like, you might be right. I'm not trying to. Percy was like, yo, the only people that was around me, TA, Joe, Munch, nobody else was around, bro, for years. And Pistol P says, okay, I got you. It must have been at that time, I guess. Percy was like, for years, so nobody. Whatever you being told or whatever, nobody cares. Because I know what's going on. Pistol P's like, listen, I've been in the studio 1,000 times with TA and with Joe, and TA never wrote a song. Now, if a nigga say a sick shit, a verse where it might say, oh, and it matches with what already was done, Percy said, yes, that's understandable. P says, that's a different story. That's not writing a whole song. You know what I'm saying? Percy was like, I was there for a lot of shit, bro. I just don't say nothing because I don't want to get involved in none of this shit. Pistol P's like, no, I got you, Purse. I get it, though. I get it. Listen, like I said, I only reached out to you because the way they said it. I said, well, that should be easy. If he around Purse all the time and Purse is down with us, then it's a no-brainer. Percy says, yes, but I'm not never doing that. I will bring him for a conversation, but I would don't bring him in. I'm not never doing that. I will never bring him for a conversation. I will bring him for a conversation, excuse me, but I would never bring him for niggas to try to pound him out. I'm never doing that. If niggas want to catch him and pound him out, they got to do that on their own. I'm never going to line them out like that. Pistol P says, I got you, Purse. I got you. No, I got you. Listen, there's something that Purse says my loyalty can't be questioned. Pistol P says that's something between you and Joe. That ain't got nothing to do with me. Percy says, don't ever question my loyalty, brother, please. Percy says, no. My thing to you is that the shit ain't got nothing to do with, at the end of the day, that's got to do with you and Joe. Ain't nothing got to do with me. I ain't worried about that as far as how loyal this and that and the other. I don't care about that. I just thought it was gonna be easy. I was like, yo, so they telling me about it. I'm like, that should be no problem. Give me Purse number. Let me find Purse and tell him to bring TA. What the F we gonna do? I don't know. He violated. He got to get handled accordingly. Nobody is going to stab him up. Percy says, my ninja, nobody pounded out this nigga yet. Cuban links yet, bro. He's over there at Castle Hill all day. Nobody went over there to pound him out. Don't tell me nothing about Purse. Pistol Pete allegedly says, Purse, you can't help that guy. Purse says, I don't care. Nobody went over there to pound him out, though. He's still right now on the internet talking shit. Nobody went over to pound him out. Why? Pistol Pete says, you can't count on that guy. Percy said it doesn't matter. Nobody went over there to pound him out. Pistol P's like, listen, I don't see him. I'm in the street. I'm in every club. I'm in the, and it's something he said in Spanish, they say. And so Percy goes on to say, bro, that B is not coming outside. He's not coming outside. Pistol P says, I'm just saying though, I'm in every effing, I'm in every fucking everybody. He says, I'm over here with these niggas on that block. I'm in over here in Fox with these ninjas. I'm in everybody hood. He says, every effing day I'm out here. I'm not gonna lie to you, bro. Man, I don't see the nigga. I'm just telling you, he's a different flow for a nigga to come out. He says, you know what? Sometimes it bothers you when a ninja that you put on and you know a certain story, like I put TA on. TA was a nobody from my hood. He is a little nigga from my hood. Percy said, yes, you did. You bought TA around, yes. And Pistol Pete was like, he a little nigga from my hood. And every little nigga in my hood want to pound him out. TA is a little nigga in the hood. He ain't nobody. So I'm saying I put him on because his uncle was my son. He wasn't even my man. He was my son too. And he knows that. Percy says, no, whatever that is, I'm just saying, that's all cool. But that's cool. You picked him up. You brought him around. You dropped him off. And then you left. So you don't know what's been going on after you left, Pete, you don't know what's been happening? Man, this shit go on, y'all. Hey, yo, this shit go on crazy work, bro. This goes on crazy work. So Pete say, I just know it's not the way to go. He on the computer and whatever, and there's a lot of ish that's not cool, right? Then Percy say, yo, nobody said nothing when Tony Sunshine was running around with Cuban links doing that same fucking thing, bro. Y'all niggas, I don't know. You niggas got selective. That's just selective memory. P says, no, I ain't selective though. Percy said it's selective, bro. It's selective. P says, you know what's going on through though on Purse? He says the people was, and then it says about the way like payoff shit. You know what niggas worrying about? Niggas ain't worried about no niggas just sweating everything. Ninjas ain't even worried about him saying about writing and all that. Joe is not even pressed about that. Purse says, when did he say that though? Is this new? Pistol P allegedly say, he told the dog, he said, yes, bro. I'm gonna tell you the truth, bro. Percy says, oh no, I know when they spoke about 6 months ago, seven longer than that. I know they spoke about last year sometime. Him and Joe was on the phone, and Joe had told because I wasn't listening to the conversation, but Joe had said something about he was gonna talk about the payoffs and all that. But I know that. Pistol Pete says that's it. Percy allegedly say, hey, he ain't say nothing on the internet right now about that. Pistol P says, no, he didn't. But this is the reason that the Dern is going crazy because of that. He says, not because it was the writing shit and all that. He don't care because that's not easy to prove. Uh, Percy was like, all right, but he not doing that though. I don't even think that's what he gonna do. But I know niggas is fake trying to get points with Joe, trying to be like, yo, I'm gonna go get him and nobody gonna touch TA, bro. Pistol Peter allegedly say, yo, listen, let me tell you something. If I build a nigga and a nigga act up and I feel like the nigga, he says, and I feel like he never got robbed because he was doing great more than, what he was doing when I met him. When he was in the hood doing shit, a bum. I took him off that shit, put him around Joe. He came, he decided he wanted to be a hype man. He decided he wanted to be a rapper. He decided he wanted to be a rapper no more. He wants to be a hype man. I told him, whoa, stay firm. You an artist, chill, stay firm with the artist. Don't go to the hype man shit. He got caught up with that whole hype shit, want to be on the road, fuck that life and shit like that. He said, F all this ish, I'll do this. I was like, okay. And then that's what he went to do. You know what I'm saying? It was something, that decided that he wanted wanted to do. I never told TA. I never told a nigga to go and become Joe's effing hype man. I told him, don't do that, man. Just stay firm and keep it the way it is. Joe is gonna make you his artist. That's it. You're gonna come out with music. But all that hype, man, all that, he was like, no, I want to go on the road. And that's what he did. I couldn't hold his hand. I was like, yes, all right then. On top of that, I never seen a dollar out of all that, out of all the blank and all the money he got, all the bread he had come back out off the plane fresh, out of joy with stupid bread. Yo, yes, I gotta pay this. I just got a baby. It was always something new. And Percy said, no, I understand because that's how it was for him. He was always having an excuse. He always had something to do with blank. You're right. Mr. Pete was like, yes, he always stupid. And I'm legit. I'm like cologne. Percy was like, let me ask you this though, Pete. Why are you now talking about, yo, he never gave me no chain or charge or nothing? You ain't seen or spoke to this nigga in years. Pistol Pete allegedly say, I spoke to him about it. I talked to him. He knows. I'm just telling you, I'm vibing with you that I never bothered him. I never even gave a F about that ish because I wanted him to be okay. You know what I'm saying? It's just like if I bring a nigga around and it's like if you bring somebody around the mafia and he goes bad and it was on your shit, you get bust open until you get cut. It's just like you being down with a gang and a nigga that you brought. Percy was like, no, I understand that. I understand. Pete was like, I hope I don't have to break that down on you. But you never, Percy was like, no, I understand it, of course. And then Pete allegedly say, hey, my thing to you is he's violating, bro. He can't do that, bro. And then Percy was like, what did he say to violate? He was just saying what? He says, just going on the internet doing that, bro. Just going on the internet violating, doing that anyway, right? So this whole conversation goes on and on and on and on and on, right? This shit go on. I'm talking about, bro, they got a recording. This conversation had to have lasted, right? So then he has a different conversation. That conversation lasted for 20 minutes. Then he has a different conversation that lasted between uh, Percy and Rich Player, right? That conversation, he has a recording. That conversation lasted around 2 minutes or whatever, like that. You know what I'm saying? Um, right? Then he goes on. He says that let me see. He says that Fat Joe allegedly made threats to him while he was campaigning for Kamala Harris presidential bid. He said he was allegedly making threats to him on burner accounts on Instagram, right? And then, like I said before, man, he shows alleged photos of this stuff. You know, who knows if it's true or not? This is what he's alleging. Um, you know, uh, yeah, man, he put a lot of stuff in there, man. You know, he put a lot of allegations in there. You know, um, a lot of pictures and stuff like this of alleged screenshots. Um, let me see. Yeah, man, he just put a lot of alleged messages in here, man. You know what I'm saying? Um, one said that he gonna get $150 in one of these alleged messages. Yeah, he shows a lot of these alleged messages, screenshots, and things of where he alleged he was threatened. You know, and so, I mean, he shows a lot of this stuff in this lawsuit I'm looking at. I'm not gonna put it on the screen, um, but he makes a lot of crazy I mean, a lot of crazy allegations, man. He says that Fat Joe uses a burner phone ending in a certain four-digit number to facilitate exploitation and trafficking, is what he is also alleging, right? Now, he says throughout his 16-year ordeal with Fat Joe, he observed that Fat Joe maintained a separate burner phone, which ended in the numbers, and I ain't gonna say the numbers, he said, which was used exclusively for private, off-record communications like Fat Joe's public or business phones. This device deliberately kept isolated, consistent with counter surveillance behavior intended to evade law enforcement detection and maintain secrecy over illicit enterprise activity. Now, he says he personally witnessed Fat Joe use the burner phone to communicate with underage girls, particularly late night hours or in the days leading up to out of town travel. These communications frequently occurred while Fat Joe was in hotel rooms, tour buses, and other private locations, right? Um, man, bro. I mean, he's making all these crazy allegations. Man, he's making some crazy allegations, man. You know what I'm saying? He's making allegations of threats. Uh, you know, he's making allegations of assault of a Latin rapper artist after a perceived online disrespect. Um, you know, he's making allegations against of an assault against rapper Mac Main. Um, he's making man, he's making all kind of allegations, man. He basically alleges that he directed an assault on DMX in Florida. He says that Fat Joe used violence extended beyond his internal crew. In one incident in Miami, Florida, he ordered the plaintiff and another associate, Raul, to confront and physically assault DMX following a verbal dispute between DMX and somebody in his inner circle. He says that Fat Joe viewed the altercation as an act of public disrespect and ordered immediate retaliation. He instructed the plaintiff, saying, if he acts up, take the hammer. The phrase "take the hammer" was understood within the enterprise's authorization to use a firearm, not simply engage in verbal or physical altercation. You know what I mean? So he made all these claims about a situation with DMX. I mean, bro, this is crazy, man. Crazy, bro. You know what I mean? And like I said, he just made a lot of these different allegations, man. You know, this is a 157-page suit, y'all. So yeah, y'all definitely gotta let me know what y'all feel on this, man. Let me know what y'all think. Like, share, subscribe, man. Fat Joe innocent, and everybody else that's on that being accused innocent unless proven guilty. You know what I'm saying? And y'all, let me know what y'all think about this, man. Let me know what y'all feel, man. You know what I mean? Again, you know, I don't personally know Tyrone Blackburn, but Tyrone Blackburn, in the Diddy case, he's a lawyer that's bringing this case. Now, in the Diddy trial, just the other day, the girl Breonna Mulholland went up there on the stand and said that Tyrone Blackburn put lies in her lawsuit. That's what she said. Now I want to hear Tyrone Blackburn acknowledge and address that, because to that is going to question the credibility of, you know what I'm saying, him on some levels. I'm just telling y'all what the truth is. You know what I'm saying? Telling y'all what the truth is. You know? So we're gonna see. Uh, so again, Fat Joe has vehemently, and his team have vehemently denied all these allegations. Right? Vehemently denied all these allegations. Uh, and so again, that is going to be used against Tyrone Blackburn. That, trust me when I tell y'all that. That's going to be used against Tyrone Blackburn. You know what I'm saying? And so you guys definitely let me know what y'all think, man. Let me know what y'all feel, man. Like, share, subscribe, man. Let me know what y'all think about this, man. You know what I'm saying? All right, you guys. So we appreciate everybody that popped in, supported this video. Make sure that you guys shop our merch. We got that new A Weapons merchandise right there below this video. All you got to do is look below. The links will be pinned at the top of the comment section as well to get the merch, to donate, support the channel, and subscribe to our podcast show. You'll see all those links pinned at the top of the comment section of this video. And we appreciate everybody that supports this channel and our networks. Also, that straight drop weight loss formula. Go to the website. You guys will see that. A link for that will be pinned at the top of the comment section as well. Go right there for all of your weight loss needs. Straight drop weight loss formula. We have a lot of testimonials on the website. You can go to www.str-8-drop.com and get you some of the weight loss formula today. Take your weight loss serious. Get in the gym, work out, exercise, and do what you got to do. Stay on point. We appreciate everybody that's been locked into this video. Again, all the links are pinned at the top of the comment section below. Salute to all of y'all. And again, we appreciate everybody who support what we doing over here.